Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. US President Donald Trump has been in office for nearly 2 years. But in this short span of time, the Trump administration has seen the highest staff turnover in decades, with senior officials either quitting, being fired, or getting eased out at a record pace. Since Trump took office in January 2017, more than 60% of his senior-most aides have left the White House. The latest in a string of officials to resign is James Mattis, the US Secretary of Defense. He announced his resignation on Thursday, hinting at policy differences with President Donald Trump. But what prompted Mattis to step down? What were the issues over which he had disagreements with Trump? And why has the Trump administration seen the highest number of exits in just 2 years? What impact is the high staff turnover having on US foreign policy? We analyze in depth today. A distinguished former Marine Corps General, James Mattis, had held the post since Donald Trump assumed office. He will leave the job in February, giving time for his successor to be named, which Trump is expected to do shortly. Mattis' resignation is seen as the latest sign of a fissure between Trump and the Republican establishment. In the latest high-profile exit from the Trump administration, US Defense Secretary James Mattis announced his resignation on Thursday. His resignation came a day after Donald Trump announced the withdrawal of American troops from Syria, a decision Mattis is believed to have opposed. News reports claim Mattis had gone to the White House on Thursday afternoon in a last-ditch attempt to persuade Donald Trump to agree to a gradual withdrawal of troops from Syria and to leave a residual force of a few hundred. He also opposed Trump's plans to halve the US contingent in Afghanistan. He was rebuffed, following which he decided to step down. Besides, in his resignation letter, Mattis pointed out disagreements with the president in a number of policy areas. In the 2-page letter to Trump, Mattis says, and I quote, "Because you have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours on these and other subjects, I believe it is right for me to step down from my position."
Well, this has been going on for some time, that people come and go. In other administrations also, people leave the administration midway. But this one has been a particularly a situation where nobody has the confidence of the president. So perhaps it's a question of whether the president has confidence in the abilities of his people or he is using them in order to create a more favorable reaction in the public. So Jim Mattis was considered to be a very serious person who knew a lot about the defense matters, foreign policy issues. So he had the respect of practically all the establishment people. So that was one area where I think President Trump was able to draw upon the goodwill meant for Mattis, even for himself. But I think it doesn't work really, because he is for himself. He does not like to have other people take any credit for anything.
In his resignation letter, Mattis stressed on the importance of allies and treating them with respect in the face of outspoken skepticism from the president. He wrote, and I quote, "One core belief I've always held is that our strength as a nation is inextricably linked to the strength of our unique and comprehensive system of alliances and partnerships. While the US remains the indispensable nation in the free world, we cannot protect our interests or serve that role effectively without maintaining strong alliances and showing respect to those allies." Further, he also emphasized on the need to remain resolute and unambiguous in the approach towards China and Russia. Mattis said he would stay in office until 28 February to allow time for a successor to be nominated and confirmed by the Senate. According to news reports, Mattis' resignation letter was hand-delivered to the president. Donald Trump later announced on Twitter that Mattis was retiring. Mattis' resignation shocked the Pentagon, senators, as well as US allies. Ohio's Republican Governor John Kasich described the current events surrounding the Trump administration as chaos, while Democratic Senator Mark Warner, who is Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, described the development scary. In a Twitter message, he called General Mattis an island of stability amidst the chaos of the Trump administration. Democratic House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said she was shaken by the announcement.
Well, I'm shaken by the news because of the patriot that General Secretary Mattis is. I think that everybody in the country should read his letter of resignation. It's a letter of great patriotism, great respect for the president, but also a statement of his values. So there's something very wrong with this picture. And this resignation is one we just were briefed a week ago by Secretary Mattis and Secretary Pompeo, and that was last Thursday, so it was 1 week ago. Our troops look to Secretary Mattis as a leader, and now he is going to be leaving them. This is very serious for our country. I yield.
As Defense Secretary, James Mattis was also a great advocate of strong Indo-US defense relationship and New Delhi's growing role in the strategic Indo-Pacific amidst China flexing its muscles in the region. Earlier this month, Mattis had hosted Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman at the Pentagon for talks on India-US defense relationship, where he had referred to the US-India relationship as a natural partnership between the world's oldest and the world's largest democracies. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Every time a high-level member of the Trump administration leaves office, a big debate happens over how significant the leaving is. Over the past 2 years, with many resignations and sackings, the reasons have not always been clear. Neither are the consequences. But with the latest resignation, that of Secretary of Defense James Mattis, the consequences are clear and they are huge. Let's take a look at how Mattis' resignation will affect the US foreign policy.
The Secretary of Defense is a significant job in any White House administration. The Defense Secretary coordinates US actions if the country is attacked or is to attack another nation. And James Mattis was an important cog in the US foreign policy wheel. He lent credibility to US foreign policies and enjoyed the confidence of even Trump critics who doubted the president's judgment and ability to make key foreign policy decisions. Experts say that Mattis and other senior officials sort of reined in President Trump's stand towards Russia and even helped push official government policy against Russia. Mattis was more in favor of a traditional US foreign policy, that is, to ally with NATO and Europe and keeping a distance from Russia.
I think there's an internal dissent within the US government framework against the populism of the US president. And Jim Mattis represented the old establishment, and he believed in a certain form of alliance maintenance overseas, a certain type of geopolitical power projection for the US overseas, and all these are mainstream American foreign policy positions which Trump was opposing. And I think Jim Mattis' exit is because out of total frustration, because he tried to somehow tutor the president to move away from his radical populist way of doing things, and he failed. So he has no option but to exit, because otherwise he will be held responsible for taking US foreign policy in a certain direction.
Mattis' resignation is also a sign of a fissure between Trump and the Republican establishment. As he formed his government early on, Trump made several appointments that indicated to the powerful constituencies in the Republican Party that he would work with them. But going by the number of resignations and firings, it seems Trump is now less interested in placating establishment interests. When Trump was elected president, he benefited from strong support from Republicans on Capitol Hill. Mattis' leaving will not help him keep up these alliances. Some Republicans are already questioning the president's political judgment after the 2018 midterms. Mattis' exit also fits a pattern of Trump getting rid of internal rivals and promoting loyalists. Ever since Trump assumed office, an idea has been going around that some officials in his administration viewed their job as just resisting Trump and his policies. But going by the series of sackings and resignations, one thing is clear. that Trump is only picking people who agree with him. With inputs from Astha Kulshresht, Bureau Report for Rajya Sabha TV.
President Donald Trump's White House has seen a number of high-profile departures since the earliest days of the administration. Appointments expected to last for years have only made it a few months, sometimes just days, ending in chaotic departures. Several Trump appointees, including Rex Tillerson and Nikki Haley, shortened their tenure due to multiple reasons.
US President Donald Trump's administration has been marked by a series of exits by high-ranking officials. Some of these top advisors were fired and some decided to leave on their own for various reasons. On March 13, 2018, adding to the long list of departures from the US administration was the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Donald Trump had sacked Rex Tillerson as his Secretary of State after months of speculation that the pair had fallen out. Trump cited the pair's differences on the Iran nuclear deal, which the president wanted to scrap. And in October 2017, Trump tweeted that Tillerson is wasting his time trying to negotiate with North Korea on nuclear weapons. Just before he was ousted, Tillerson had also cast the poisoning of an ex-spy in Britain as part of a certain unleashing of activity by Russia, diverging from the White House's official response. However, experts say it wasn't the disagreement over moving the US embassy to Jerusalem or the wisdom of direct talks with North Korea or even the very clear split with the president over Russia's aggression. In the end, Tillerson had some direct clashes with Trump in private and in public, and that's what cost him his job. Rex Tillerson had no prior public service experience when he accepted the role of America's top diplomat. Tillerson was replaced by Mike Pompeo, formerly the director of the CIA.
He has fired a number of people and many have been forced to quit in very ignominious circumstances. It's kind of like a revolving door, you know, they come in and then they go out, and that's been happening for a long time. He has never settled down, Trump, you know, because he didn't have a base in the Republican Party to start with. He was an outsider. So he picked people who actually did not gel with his frequency, with his wavelength in terms of foreign policy thinking or even domestic issues. So what he has done is, over time he has realized that these are not the people he wants, and he's pushed them out. And so even if you recall, Flynn was a national security advisor only for a few days. Then he had to be fired because of scandal. Then he brought in one Secretary of State, and then now he has another one. And likewise with almost all the top cabinet positions, there has been a high level of attrition. And it's because of this tussle between the establishment and the populists who are coming from outside. And it so happens that the boss is the populist, and therefore he is now firing people left, right and center because he wants to establish his way of doing things and his imprint on the policy making. And the old guard is resisting it. So this is a tussle between the old guard and these outside radicals led by Trump.
Another notable departure from Trump's White House was of US Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Trump announced Haley's resignation in the Oval Office in early October, saying she would be leaving at the end of 2018. The shock announcement came a few weeks after Trump attended the UN General Assembly in New York City. However, Haley cited personal reasons for her departure. In a remark, Trump had said that he hoped Haley would come back in a different role, telling her you can have your pick. She had served in the Trump administration 19 months. Nikki Haley, the daughter of Indian immigrants, was appointed to the role by President Donald Trump in January 2017. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In addition to his cabinet, the churn in top-level staff in the Trump White House has also left the administration ponder upon potential members. Here's a look at the exodus from the White House in the last 2 years.
The Trump White House had more first-year departures than any other US president in at least 40 years. And these departures haven't stopped. In addition to his cabinet, the churn in top-level staff in the White House has also been in news every now and then. The latest is the resignation of Defense Secretary James Mattis, who President Trump announced will be leaving at the end of February next year. The list has several names. Anthony Scaramucci was fired as the communications director just 11 days after he was announced for the job. He joined office on 21st July 2017 and served till 31st July 2017. Scaramucci was under fire after the New Yorker published a vulgar conversation he had with one of its writers. Scaramucci's ouster was the most recent high-profile departure from the Trump White House. Scaramucci is the third White House communications director to leave the post that had been vacant since late May, when Mike Dubke left after about 3 months on the job. Sean Spicer, the former White House press secretary, also assumed some of the communications director role before he resigned when Scaramucci was hired on 21st July. Dina Powell resigned after 354 days in office, serving as a top national security advisor. She took over office on January 18, 2017 and served till January 12, 2018. Dina Powell, a Cairo-born, Dallas-raised former executive at Goldman Sachs, first joined Trump's team after advising his daughter Ivanka on women's empowerment issues. Powell reportedly left the administration on good terms with the president, unlike other officials who have either resigned or have been fired. Reince Priebus was fired after 190 days as Trump's chief of staff. He assumed office on January 20, 2017 and served till July 23, 2017. Trump announced in a tweet that General John F. Kelly would be replacing him following widespread speculations that he was on his way out. It was said that Trump had lost his confidence in him after major legislative items failed to pass the US Congress. However, John Kelly too didn't last long. Kelly started working in the administration on July 31, 2017 and will be demitting office by the end of 2018. Kelly, a retired Marine Corps general, was one of the several ex-military men who joined the Trump administration early on, initially as Secretary of Homeland Security. He was later installed as Chief of Staff in July 2017 after Reince Priebus was let go. Kelly's departure from the White House comes amid reports that he and Trump are no longer speaking to one another.
The future people will be totally devoted to both President and his son-in-law and all the presidential doctrines, because the point is that President, if he does not have full trust in the establishment, then the issues come up. Because there are people in the law department who would like to examine as to how the Russians had intervened in the democratic election processes in the United States. And now China also is being considered as one of the culprits. So therefore, if Trump wants to leave his mark on the administration, he has to have direct relationship with the leaders of the world. But if those leaders of the world are considered as the culprits who have been undermining the stability and the electoral processes in their states, then obviously there is trouble. So therefore, that President Trump has to sort it out with the political parties, Republicans and Democrats, and within the administration.
Trump's administration has set records for staff turnover, and he has often struggled to attract experienced political professionals, a challenge that has grown more difficult after his popularity downslide recently and an uncertain political environment. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Donald Trump's administration has been mired in controversies ever since the beginning of his presidency. In our next report, we take a look at Trump's brush with controversies.
US President Donald Trump seems to be in the line of fire on all fronts. He is facing a slew of charges from his charity to his inaugural committee. Donald Trump is also currently facing the ire of his supporters over his retreat on the US-Mexico border wall that he promised in his poll campaign. The US president's demand for $5 billion in the upcoming funding bill for the Mexico wall triggered a possible government shutdown, with the US Congress refusing to back his bill. Finally, Trump was forced to back away from his demand. He had earlier repeatedly suggested that he will reject budget bills that include no money for his project. The Trump administration's brush with controversy began with his presidency itself. Allegations of Russian interference in the 2016 US elections to bolster Trump's chances came to the fore right after the elections ended. President-elect Trump rejected claims of foreign interference. Trump also dismissed FBI Director James Comey as he expressed suspicion over the whole thing. At least 11 of Trump's associates or officials have admitted to having contact with Russians during the campaign or the transition period. Currently, Trump's former national security advisor is facing legal jeopardy as the court said he sold out his country when he lied to the FBI about his Russian contacts. Flynn pleaded guilty in December 2017 to lying about his contacts with the Russian ambassador to the US. Federal prosecutors are also investigating the finances of President Donald Trump's inaugural committee. This to identify whether foreigners contributed to its events using straw donors. President Trump has ordered the shutdown of his charity Trump Foundation after a lawsuit by New York's Attorney General Barbara Underwood. Underwood claimed that Trump misused the foundation to advance his 2016 presidential campaign and his businesses. She also sued Trump's adult children Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka. Trump, however, called Underwood's lawsuit a concoction by sleazy New York Democrats. Donald Trump's immigration policies have also attracted global criticism. He tried to impose a travel ban prohibiting visas to citizens of 7 largely Muslim countries. The travel ban met with legal hurdles. The third time revised travel ban was upheld by the Supreme Court in June 2018. He also attempted to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, but a legal injunction has allowed the policy to continue. He imposed a zero-tolerance policy to arrest all illegal immigrants at the border, which resulted in separating children from their families. Currently, the Trump administration is reviewing the H-1B visa rules, planning to revise the definition of employment and specialty occupations under the H-1B visas by January, a move which is said to have an adverse impact on Indian IT companies in the US. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And that's it from us in today's edition of In Depth. You can also watch our episodes online on YouTube and Twitter and get back to us with your feedback and suggestions. Thanks very much for your time.